What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Quinn Chess, where we solve a difficult puzzle every single day, and I walk you through the solution as I think through it live. So, in this puzzle, we're looking at another one that's just above the 2200 range on chess.com. Let's go through our typical process. So, we're going to analyze the position and just look at it from a very high level. So, for example, his king safety. His king safety looks quite jeopardized as we have a rook that's cutting off a lot of squares on the seventh rank. We have a queen that's coming in and can give checks, and it can also give checks on d6. And we have a pawn that can potentially push and give a check as well. Our king is not so endangered on our side of the board here. He has a queen and a knight that's converging in on f3, but our rook is covering that pretty well at the moment. He has a rook that's also slicing across the board in the seventh rank. So he does have some attention focus on our side as well. And material-wise, he's got two extra knights. So I would give his king safety maybe like a 2 out of 10. I'll give our king safety a 3 out of 10, possibly a 4 out of 10. But either way, there's some urgency to try to make something happen in this position because we're down so much material and our king isn't completely safe either. In terms of piece activity, we have a very, very active queen, a little bit more so than his queen. His knights are hopping all over the board here. He's got one rook that's not doing much, and we have one rook that's not doing much. So I would say his pieces are actually comparably active to ours because he's got more material as well. He's got more to work with. And material, like I said, we're up a pawn, but we're down by two knights. So let's think about what that all means in terms of what we have to accomplish in this puzzle. Well, we're probably going to be somewhat focused, at least somewhat focused on a checkmate because we're down so much material that even if we pick a rook up, we would only be even in material afterwards. And winning a knight in this position is not enough. Moreover, his pieces are not really vulnerable at the moment. He's got knights that are protecting each other, and his queen is not under attack, and neither are his rooks. But there's a possibility at some point that we could maybe fork his rooks by giving a check on d6, picking up this rook on f8. And we have to keep that in mind. If we can capture that rook with a check and continue our attack, maybe it's worth it. So I would give checkmate, looking for checkmate here, a 80% probability. I would give winning material a 20% probability. And within that winning material category, I think it's pretty unclear which piece we would win. They all look somewhat reasonably winnable, except these knights that are protecting each other in the middle. So let's go ahead and think about candidate moves. So the first move that jumps to mind is this e5 check. His king is in such a dire situation right now that almost all the squares that he can possibly move to are cut off by our rook, our queen, and these two, and this pawn on h4, if you just do a quick analysis. So any check in this position that he can't block, capture, or block or capture is going to be a checkmate. So if you go e5 check, he obviously can't block that check because it's adjacent to his king. He would have to capture it. And so knight takes e5 would be forced. And following that move, we have another check, queen to d6 check, that also cannot be captured. And so he has to block that check as well by moving his knight to e6. And then after that, I see that if we move our queen to e7, it's a dove's tail pattern supported by a rook on b7. And it's a checkmate because these two squares are occupied by his own pawns. But we don't have to do it necessarily in that move order. We can give a check on d6 first, and we have to explore what's the difference. So queen d6 check, knight to e6 is forced. And now if we do the other move in the sequence, e5 check, the problem here is that he can take now with his queen on e5, and that's going to give a check to our king and force a queen trade. So that's why I think starting with e5 makes more sense here. And I'm quite sure that that's actually the correct move. I did have a chance to look at this puzzle beforehand, not with an engine or anything like that, but I did scope it out and calculate it a little bit ahead of time. So e5 check, and let's see if there's any other moves that we could possibly consider just to try to falsify our own idea here. Rook f7 would just lose the piece to a rook. Queen takes c6 doesn't work because his knight is covering it. And I don't know, maybe like rook b1 just looks a little bit too slow. Plus he's got queen takes f3 mate. And same with any other move of the rook that's not a move to the f file. So with all that in mind, let's go ahead and move forward with our plan. Our calculation looks pretty good in my opinion. So e5 check first. So he does play the only move. Queen d6 check. He has to block with his knight. And queen c7, queen e7 finishes him off. So that was a nice and easy puzzle. Another mate in 3. We've gotten 3 mate in 3 puzzles in a row now in the 2200 to 2400 category.